Hello everyone, I Assistant Professor Pragati Shetty from Department of Microbiology, KJ Somaiya College. In this online lecture, we will study about the influenza virus. In the last two online lectures, we have started the influenza virus, right? In the last lectures, we will just revise. We have learned the structure of the influenza virus, right? What is its genetical characteristic, what antigens or what are the proteins that are antigenic proteins present on its surface, right? What are the important proteins, antigenic viral proteins. Then we saw the type A, type B and the type C of the influenza virus, right? Each type we saw the features, that is the host range, epidemiology, clinical features, genome and the structure. Okay, then we saw the epidemiology of the influenza virus. Okay, epidemiology. Then we saw the pathogenicity and the pathogenesis of the influenza virus, right? In this online lecture, after the pathogenesis and the pathogenicity, we will see the what are the clinical features of the influenza virus, right? Clinical features, symptoms. Okay, what are the symptoms of the influenza virus or this disease? Okay, this flu. What are the symptoms of this flu? Now the important point, the incubation period for this virus is the 1 to 3 days. After that, it will start showing the symptoms or the clinical features. Alright, the incubation period for the virus is 1 to 3 days. Okay, then it ranges from the mild coryza to the fulminating fatal pneumonia, which means from the mild infection it can reaches to the pneumonia. Okay, then most of the infection are subclinical. Okay, what is the coryza? Coryza is the initial infection, that is the inflammation of the mucous membranes in the respiratory or in the nose. Okay, inflammation in the nose, inflammation of the mucous membranes in the nose, that is the coryza, which is the initial stage, to the pneumonia. Okay, that is the fatal stage. Okay, then the onset of disease, that means how it will ranges, what is its range, the onset of disease, how it will proceed with its symptoms, right? Then is disrupt, start with fever, headache and then generalized myalgia. Okay, that means it will start with the fever, then with the headache. These are the symptoms, these are the onset of symptoms that the patient will have, and then the generalized myalgia. Okay, which means, what the myalgia means, the term used to describe the pains, that is the pain in the muscles. Okay, muscle aches, then the muscle pains. Okay, that is called as the myalgia. All right, or the certain tension in the muscles or in the joints, right? That can also come in this term, this category. Okay, now the next, what are the next clinical features? Abdominal pain, pain in the abdomen, or the vomiting. Especially these symptoms are observed in the type B influenza. Okay, type B influenza, what are the symptoms? Abdominal pain and the vomiting. Now important complications, what are the complications can happen due to this virus. Now first is the pneumonia, right? We saw in the previous points the pneumonia, it can range to the pneumonia, right? Fatal pneumonia. Then the cardiac complications such as the congestive failure, or the cardiac means what? The heart related diseases, right? So the cardiac complications, the congestive failure or the myocarditis, and the neurological involvement such as the encephalitis. This much complications can cause due to this virus. Okay, and as we saw also, the pathogenicity of this virus, that is very very pathogenic, right? Very, only three viral particles of the virus is very sufficient enough to initiate the infection, and that is very pathogenic, and therefore that can reach to this stage, that is it can cause the cardiac complication, then it can cause the pneumonia, right? Also the encephalitis, right? Then the type B infection associated with the Reye syndrome. Okay, then it specially affects the young children. Okay, then what it does in the young children, the symptoms can be the changes in the brain or the change in the liver or the kidneys. It can affect these organs, right, in the young children. Then it can also sometimes cause the gastrointestinal symptoms. Okay, these are the clinical features of the influenza virus. Clinical features are the symptoms of the influenza virus, right? Then we will see what is the laboratory diagnosis. Okay, so first we will start with the demonstration of the virus antigen. Then we have certain 4 steps for the laboratory diagnosis. Okay, first, demonstration of the virus, that is we look for the virus is present or not in the sample. Then we will see the isolation of the virus. Then if we got the presence of the virus in the first step, then what we will do, we will proceed with the isolating that virus. Okay, then third, we will test that virus, the serological test, right? I have mentioned in the earlier lectures, the serological test include the elution test, hemagglutination test, precipitation test, right? Immunoprecipitation test, this will come under the, or the complement fixation test. These are the serological test, and with the help of this test we will confirm the viral antigen. Okay, or we can also determine the which type of the virus is present depending on its special antigenic proteins. All right, antigenic proteins variations, we can determine that also, which type of the virus is present. Okay, and then fourth, we will do the PCR based diagnosis. Okay, now we will see one by one in detail. So we will start with the demonstration of the virus antigen. Now how we can rapidly check that virus is present or not in the test sample? We can check by the immunofluorescence assay. Okay, now in this, what sample we will use? We will use the nasopharyngeal cells. Okay, we can use the swabs also. Okay, or the nasopharyngeal cells which are in contact with our respiratory tract also. All right, and respiratory tract is the main site of the infection of this virus, and that's why we will take the sample from there. Okay, then we will do the immunofluorescence assay, immunofluorescence test, and from that very rapid test we will be looking for the presence or absence for the virus. If present, fluorescence will happen. If absent, no change. Okay, then if say we have got the fluorescence, we have got the positive immunofluorescence test. Now what we will take the next step will be the isolation of that virus, right? Now we are suspected the presence of virus in the sample. Okay, Now we have to isolate that virus from that sample. So for that, how we will isolate? The first, we will take the sample, or the virus isolation can be obtained readily during the first 2 or 3 days of the illness, right? As I mentioned, we have saw in the earlier slide, that is the incubation period is the 1 to 3 days, right? And after that the clinical symptoms will be appear, and that's why as soon as the symptoms will appear, we can readily isolate the virus. And that is why they have mentioned that the first 2 to 3 days, or the later on days also, we can isolate the virus, right? Now which sample is used here? The throat garglings are collected. Okay, throat garglings, that is the respiratory tract, right? The cells or the organism, the virus, if virus particles are present attached with there, right? If the virus is present, it will attached in the respiratory tract. Therefore we will take the throat garglings, and which are the gargling samples are collected using the saline, broth saline, or the other suitable buffered salt solution. Okay, that will not change the properties of our sample. That is why we are using the saline or the buffered salt solution. Okay, and if the sample is getting delayed for the processing, then we can store the sample at the 4 degrees Celsius. Or if the sample is getting delayed for very more time, then we can store that sample at the -70 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that the virus should remain viable, should remain live. That is why we are storing it at the very low temperatures. All right, now the specimen and the properties of the virus also should be remain same, right? So that is why the storage conditions are like this. Now the specimen or the test sample should be treated with the antibiotic to destroy the antibiotics to destroy the antibodies. Okay, if already some other antibodies are present, then our test will be the false test, right? It will not proper, and that's why the specimen should be treated with the antibiotics. Okay, to destroy the bacteria, if any bacteria are present. Now why bacteria can be present? I have mentioned in the earlier lecture that once the virus will enter into the respiratory tract, right? And that is why what it will do, it will reduce the viscosity of the mucous membrane, mucus cells that line the respiratory tract, and therefore this will make the respiratory tract or the mucus cells vulnerable for the bacterial invasion. And that's why if the bacteria are present in that tract, then we have to kill that bacteria first, so that only virus will remain there. Okay, and how we can do that? We can treat the sample with the antibiotics that is specific for the bacteria. Okay, now the isolation may be in the X. Now as we all know, viruses can be only isolated or can be only cultured using the live cells, okay, or the tissues. It cannot be isolated on the normal laboratory basis as we do for the bacteria, right? We use the media, we use the agar, right, and the broth for the growing the bacteria, right, the bacterial pathogens. But unlike the bacteria, we use the tissue culture for the virus growth, right? That's why the isolation may be in the eggs or in the monkey kidney cell culture. Okay, then we cultured the virus, right? Now with the growth present, okay, Now the material that is inoculated into the amniotic cavity, we all know the egg, right? The egg will be having the amniotic fluid, and the part which contains the amniotic fluid is called as the amniotic cavity. Okay, this amniotic cavity of the 11 to 13 days old eggs, using at least 6 eggs per specimen. The sample, the material is inoculate, we inoculate the sample into the amniotic cavity of the 11 to 13 days old eggs. Okay, using at least 6 eggs per specimen. All right, then we will incubate this at the 35 degrees Celsius, 35 degrees Celsius for 3 days. Okay, after that, the fluids, the amniotic fluid that is present, if the virus has been grown in this eggs, the fluids are tested for the hemagglutination. Okay, using the guinea pig cells, guinea pig RBCs and the foal cells. Okay, simultaneously at the room temperature at the 4 degrees Celsius. Okay, now in this also the important point is the type A will agglutinate with only guinea pig cells, type E will agglutinate with both. Okay, guinea pig and the fowl cells, and the type C will agglutinate with only the foal cells. Okay, now I'll repeat the incubation or the isolating process for this virus, right? What we'll do first, we will inoculate the virus, or we will inoculate the sample into the eggs, right? Eggs or the okay, we can inoculate into the eggs or monkey kidney cell culture. Now we inoculate the cells in the 11 to 13 day old eggs, 13 to 11 to 13 days old amniotic cavity cells, and in these cells we will incubate this inoculated culture and in the eggs for the 35 degrees Celsius for the 3 days. After the incubation period, we will test the fluid, amniotic fluid in the egg for hemagglutination test. Now in this we will test with the guinea pig RBCs and the fowl cells RBCs. What is the fowl means? Which means the bird RBCs. Okay, right? Now the type A will agglutinate with only guinea pig cells, right? And with the help of these specifications for the type, we are able to determine which type of the influenza is present in the person's body, right? If the test sample will agglutinate only with the guinea pig cells, then we can say type A influenza is present, and which is most common. If the person's specimen will agglutinate, that is the inoculated sample will agglutinate with the guinea pig as well as the bird RBCs, the fowl cells, then we can say the B type. Okay, and if the RBCs will, and if the agglutination will be there only with the RBCs for the bird, then we can say that there is the type C virus is present, right? Now along with the hemagglutination, we can do the immunofluorescence elution test. Okay, as we all know, we have saw in the earlier lecture, the hemagglutination and the elution are two important tests to determine the hemagglutinin and the neuraminidase enzyme proteins, which these proteins are present where? They are present in the lipid membrane, right? Protein and the lipid layer. Okay, these are called as the viral protein or the V proteins, right? Now the third portion is the serology. Now what are the serological tests? Hemagglutination titer, right? As we have discussed about the hemagglutination titer. Now here there is a little difference. Okay, this is the HI, which means hemagglutination inhibition titer. All right. Now what will happen in this? In this, the highest dilution of the serum, okay, that inhibit the hemagglutination is called as the hemagglutination inhibition titer, right? What is the hemagglutination titer? The highest viral dilution, virus titer, that is required for causing agglutination. That is hemagglutination titer. And what is hemagglutination inhibition? That is the HI titer is the highest dilution of the serum, right? Serum that inhibit the hemagglutination. Okay, that is called as the HI titer. Now second, the complement fixation test. This test is done for the ribonucleoprotein, right? I have mentioned this earlier also. The complement fixation test is used for the RNP, the ribonucleoprotein. Okay. The third one is the radial immunodiffusion. This test in the agarose gel, right? The radial immunodiffusions are the immunodiffusion test are done using the agar, right? Agarose gel. That is why they're diffused in the agarose, right? And in this test, we use this test for identifying the antibodies that are present to the RNP antigen, right? Antibodies are present if the virus is present, right? The body will develop some antibodies to that we can determine using the radial immunodiffusion test using the agarose gel. Okay, now this test in the agarose gel and have been described for the identification of the antibodies to the RNP antigen. Okay, which are the antibodies for the RNP, hemagglutinin and the neuraminidase? Sorry, the antibodies we can check for the antigens such as the RNP, hemagglutinin and the neuraminidase. Okay, and the radial immunodiffusion is also can be used for the rapid diagnosis. Okay, then the fourth and the last one in the serological, in the laboratory diagnosis, are the PCR based diagnosis. Okay, now PCR, as we know, polymerase chain reaction. This is used to multiply, right, the virus in the clinical specimen and to identify the virus in the clinical specimen. Okay, with the help of specific primers, right? Now this is the procedure for the laboratory diagnosis of the influenza virus, starting with the demonstrating the virus, checking the presence, then isolating the virus isolation, then third is the serological test, fourth is the PCR based diagnosis, right? PCR based diagnosis. Then we will see the